This is a pro-Donald Trump rally on Avenida Paulista in São Paulo, Brazil. It's an example of how Israel's U.S.-backed war on Gaza is playing out in South America's largest country. The left staunchly in defense of Palestine, the far right defending Israel and the United States. Both sides have become symbols for their separate causes inside Brazil.
In Brazilian domestic politics, people are becoming more identified with Israel or with Palestine, with the Arab political movements. It's more or less a right-left-wing fight. So conservative politicians in Brazil nowadays, they appear in public with Israeli flags, with Israeli t-shirts, because Israel is very important to the Brazilian evangelicals. We are talking about 30% of the Brazilian population. It's a very important political group for the presidential election next year. And in the left, the more traditional view is that Brazil should support Palestine.
In mid-June, thousands of people hit the streets of São Paulo in defense of Palestine and in opposition to Israel's inhumane war on Gaza. Just days later, evangelicals held the massive March for Jesus. Countless people wore Israeli flags. Among them was São Paulo State Governor Tarcísio Genro. He is also the most likely conservative candidate to run for the Brazilian presidency next year. It did not go over well in the country's Arab community. Brazil has the largest population of people descended from the Middle East in all of Latin America.
O governador de São Paulo humilhou toda a comunidade ontem árabe, síria, libanesa, que são milhões. É um erro grave do governador de São Paulo que não tem nada a ver com guerra, nada a ver. São Paulo é um estado da federação.
The numbers of evangelicals in Brazil have been rising almost exponentially in recent years. They were a huge force in the election of former far-right President Jair Bolsonaro, and they're playing an increasingly prominent role in far-right politics in Brazil. For them, the Israeli flag is a symbol. It was front and center at last year's CPAC Brazil conference.
Essa bandeira de Israel, nós somos no Brasil país que é mais de 80%, mais de 90% cristão. E a palavra de Deus, que é a Bíblia, ela diz que eu abençoarei aqueles que te abençoarem. Então, nós usamos a bandeira do Brasil porque nós abençoamos Israel. Nós cremos que lá é a Terra Santa, que lá é o povo escolhido do Senhor. E nós somos, vamos dizer assim, enxertados na oliveira. E nós amamos Israel.
Brazilian Middle East analyst Monique Goldfeld says that in Brazil, the Israel-Palestine conflict has really become a question of internal politics over the last 10 years.
A gente tem uma direita muito ligada a grupos evangélicos que se apropriou de uma imagem de Israel que não necessariamente condiz com a realidade de Israel. Eu morei em Israel há muito tempo, eu sei que é bastante diferente, e que usa os símbolos, né, enfim, a estrela de Davi, a bandeira de Israel em manifestações políticas, e isso ficou associado no primeiro momento ao Jair Bolsonaro.
Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro is the face of the far-right movement in Brazil. He's Catholic, but he has deep ties to evangelicals. His wife is devout. While in office, Bolsonaro boasted of opening up a new era of relations with Israel. He traveled there, met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and opened up an office for Brazilian trade in Jerusalem. Bolsonaro, however, is now wearing an ankle bracelet. He's accused of attempting to orchestrate a coup to remain in power and is currently standing trial in Brazil. U.S. President Donald Trump responded in defense of his ally, slapping Brazil with 50% tariffs for its lawsuit against Bolsonaro. In a shocking partisan attack on Brazil's independent judicial system, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has stripped U.S. visas from the 8 Supreme Court justices the United States believes are antagonistic to Bolsonaro. Rubio left Bolsonaro's allies on the court untouched. Meanwhile, many Brazilians have been marching in the streets against the United States, Donald Trump, and in defense of Palestine.
sobretudo aí também, né, desde a guerra em Gaza, mas antes disso mesmo, né, era muito comum você ver kefia ou ver a bandeira palestina em manifestações da esquerda.
Estado assassino e viva a luta!
Aniquilando o povo através do uso da força. Hoje a faixa de Gaza vive uma situação de grave calamidade humanitária, fruto da política do Estado de Israel, que é apoiada, sempre foi apoiada pelo imperialismo norte-americano, mas agora está pior ainda, porque a política do Trump escancarou, e na verdade ele quer usar a faixa de Gaza para fazer um resort de luxo e quer matar o povo, quer acabar, destruir com o povo palestino. Então a gente está aqui nos expressando na rua.
Povo palestino, Estado de Israel, Estado assassino.
É necessário romper as relações políticas, econômicas, militares, diplomáticas, culturais e esportivas com o Estado de Israel. Isso foi assim na época do apartheid na África do Sul, e o bloqueio internacional foi muito importante para acabar com o apartheid.
President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva hasn't broken relations with Israel, but ties between the two countries are at a low. Lula has repeatedly condemned the violence in Palestine.
Absolutamente nada justifica as ações terroristas perpetradas pelo Hamas. Mas não podemos permanecer indiferentes ao genocídio praticado em Israel, por Israel em Gaza, e a matança indiscriminada de civis inocentes e o uso da fome como arma de guerra. A solução desse conflito só será possível com o fim da ocupação israelense e com o estabelecimento de um Estado palestino soberano dentro das fronteiras de 1967.
Analyst Monique Goldfeld explains how Israel's war on Gaza is shaping domestic Brazilian politics, similar to the United States. Support for Israel or Palestine lines up along political lines. There's a powerful evangelical lobby pushing a pro-Israel agenda. But there are many differences. The number of Brazilians descended from the Middle East is 3 times larger than in the United States, and the Jewish population is tiny.
Os Estados Unidos, tem 300 milhões de habitantes, tem 6 milhões de judeus. O Brasil tem 200 milhões de habitantes, tem 120 mil judeus. É uma comunidade muito pequena e é uma comunidade que aqui não tem peso político quase. Embora tenham políticos brasileiros, figuras judias muito proeminentes.
But far beyond the Jewish community, for evangelicals and the country's far right, Israel has become a symbol for Jesus, God, religious devotion, and the evangelical movement.
Por que é que vocês estão com a bandeira de Israel?
Porque somos cristãos, assim como Israel.
While the left is waving the flag for the Palestinian cause. In a June poll, over half of Brazilians had a disfavorable opinion of Israel. The same month, activists held the largest marches in defense of Palestine that Brazil had ever seen. Tens of thousands in the streets. They say they will not be silent. That the situation in Gaza is too dire, the suffering too great, the thousands of innocent deaths too many. While Brazil has long defended the right of both Israel and Palestine to exist, that doesn't mean the country will be silent over Israel's violence in Gaza. Brazil recently announced plans to join the genocide case against Israel in the International Court of Justice. It's a sign of Brazil's support for Palestine, both in and outside the government. Despite the far right's embrace of Israel and the United States, the majority of Brazilians are standing against Israel's attack on Gaza and the ongoing occupation. They're standing in defense of Palestine. For The Real News, I'm Michael Fox.